Bottom line, is the trade war over?
No, Brian, I think it's going to be interesting that we get a signing ceremony today. I think what was in phase one, based upon what has been reported, is about the bare minimum it would have taken to get both sides to the table. I think it is, notable that President Xi is not part of this. I think that is an indication by both the Trump White House as well as China to not make too much of this. And I think the big deal here, kind of that's been reported in the last 24 hours, is the tariff relief is not as big as we would have liked to have seen. So the cushion before further escalation is less than what the market expected. That's why we saw a little bit of a correction yesterday. And I think once we get the full details today, it's not going to be as robust as we would have liked to have seen.
And Ed, something else that probably is not in here are protections for U.S. companies involving intellectual property. Do you think this is because China doesn't even see the intellectual property issue as a trade issue?
I think that's a good point. I think what China has been saying since the beginning here is they've always kind of mentioned this as a 40-40-20 problem. There's about 40% of this that we could do today, 40% that can be done in 5 years, and about 20% that is off limits. Some of the things that Trump wanted to spend the time on and what he spent the last 2 years on were things in that 20% bucket. And over the last couple of months, we've spent things that were in that first 40% bucket. State-owned enterprises, the support that China provides for them, forced technology transfer, real changes to intellectual property. Those are things that China does not want to change. There'll be some movement here on the intellectual property side of this, but probably, once again, about the bare minimum it would have taken for both sides to sit down and sign something.
Ed, final debate ahead of the big vote in Iowa next month. Out of all the debates that you have watched, do you have a sense that any Democratic candidate on stage will handle the trade war with China differently than the Trump administration?
Well, not really. I mean, I think one of the things that, Trump does absolutely get credit for is that the conversation with China has completely changed. It was a situation when he took office where you couldn't confront China, you couldn't have some of the conversations, or else there would be real consequences. There has been a lot of volatility, and there's been certain consequences, especially among farmers and with agriculture. So that's probably the one area you would see Democrats significantly change this. But overall, China has largely gotten the message that kind of the American people view China differently today than they did before President Trump got into office. And it would be incumbent upon anyone who wins in 2020 to continue this fight, because a lot of the issues he's raised has resonated in a bipartisan way with the American people.